I would say this. I would say at some point along the way, we transitioned from stone tablets to stone soup. I've been using the metaphor of stone soup. I think along the way we discovered what we really need to do is go, maybe you've got experience, maybe you've got money, maybe you've got coaching, maybe you've got a few people, maybe you've got a building. But if we were all to put our stuff in the middle of the town, we could probably start a church. Welcome to Jesus in the Upper Left, where we're talking about gospel multiplication in the Pacific Northwest.
Hello and welcome to the Multiply PDX podcast, Jesus in the Upper Left. We are so happy to be back again. I'm with a couple of my co-hosts, Mr. Oshua Hawthorne, Mr. Gabe Kolstad.
Hello.
I will let them introduce themselves, but we are back with another episode.
What's up, Pete?
Hey.
Happy to be here. It's an honor to hang out with you guys and to contribute to the work of Multiply PDX.
Right on. Do you work at Brilliance Labs, Oshua?
It's a nonprofit startup that invests in kingdom entrepreneurs in the city of Portland and the surrounding region.
Yes.
And so, I don't know, this Multiply PDX is one of those projects we get to invest in.
Right on. Gabe?
Hey, and I'm with Westside Community Church in Beaverton. And been here for a long time. Actually, I've been, January was my 25th year on staff at this church.
Gosh,
25.
amazing.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
16 years as the pastor here. So been through, we've watched the community change and, lots of stuff happen over the years. Church has been through every phase you can think of. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what made you want to start Multiply PDX, and where did that, give us a timeline, and
Sure.
how did that all come together?
Okay. I think I would probably go back to college where I was going to Multnomah in the 90s and Multnomah University here in Portland.
The dream of the 90s.
Dream of the 90s, man.
Multnomah.
And
The
it
organization
was
formerly known as Multnomah Bible
College. And before that, what was it? Multnomah School of the Bible.
School.
So it was so long ago that when I went to Multnomah, it had just turned from Multnomah School of the Bible to Multnomah Bible College. Wow. And then more recently, now it's Multnomah University. Yeah. But so I was there and missions was my focus, my emphasis, and cross-cultural missions. Thought I was going to be a missionary, my wife and I both. One of the books I read during my time at Multnomah was called Church Planting for a Greater Harvest by C. Peter Wagner.
Yes.
And I loved that book. It was probably I can remember two books. Only remember two books. That was one of them.
Yeah.
And he said in there that church planting is the most effective form of evangelization. And I just bought that. I just bought that line, And so I was always thinking my wife, Melissa, and I are going to go overseas and plant churches. That's what I thought we would do. So we go to Chicago after college to train with this organization called International Teams. And they had 500-ish missionaries in places around the world. And we were going to do some overseas stuff for a number of years, and in my view, my plan that I had cooked up in my mind was then we were going to go plant some churches, and it just blew up, just didn't work out. Got shut down so hardcore by God, I think himself, and so we were sort of on our faces in Chicago trying to figure out what was next, and felt led back here, and really felt directed by God back here. And so I thought we were going to be missionaries. And I think it turns out we have been missionaries, just not the way we thought. So this church planting thing was in my mind, but with no way to do anything about it, So I come to work at the church that I'm at now for 9 years, supporting my father-in-law, who was the pastor before me for 32 years, actually. And it was more of a turnaround situation. So this church needed to sort of get back to health and get back to mission and have some renewal. And he was driving that. And along the way, I just kept on having this, when are we ever going to plant a church? We had all these missionaries. I don't know if any of you listening or watching can relate with the old school days of a church where you'd have all these missionary pictures on a wall somewhere, right? Yeah. And you'd be like, oh yeah, we send money there and there and there and there and there.
We still have
all
that,
these
Gabe,
things
at our church.
Okay, well that's fine.
He's old school.
I'm down with it.
Well, that's cool. I love missions. I love missions. But for me, I was always fascinated when one of those people would come in from Ecuador or Colombia or Guatemala or something and be like, hey, in our Bible college, we just graduated some people. And I'm like, how do your church is 75 people. How do you have a Bible college at your church? And they're like, no, we graduated 3 students. And I'm like, I love that. How come we don't have a Bible college? Always thinking about why is it that we make things so complicated in our situation in America, that we can't seem to raise up missionaries, because in our scenario, you got to raise, $150,000, give up 4 years of your life, then go candidates. It's all so complicated, So I was always fascinated that they could do that, and felt like, well, when are we going to do that? Along the way, we got a chance to partner with a church plant actually out of New York into San Francisco. And that was in 2008. And I think that kind of, for me, that was the first chance to go, okay, there's something we can at least, maybe we are just riding the coattails of this thing, but there's people that are getting together and they have a great track record. And so I want to watch something.
What church was? Can you share what
that was?
Church
the Journey Church in New York City, plus
Mm-hmm.
Lake Point Church in Dallas, Texas, and several others getting together to plant Journey Church of San Francisco.
Okay, right on.
And we got to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got invited into several other things kind of like that over the years. Once in Montreal, City Church in Montreal, which is doing great with Chris up there. And several others through the years. I think we're going on our 10th one right now, if you count everything that we've been a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And so around 2016, we were sort of lamenting, like, we don't still have a tribe because we're an independent church, and we don't really have like a denomination, and we don't really have a way to, we can't do this thing where we're going like, hey, let's call all our buddies and let's plant a church together, So it was a little bit out of desperation. I had a friend named Chris Lagerlof, who might be watching or listening, from Mission Orange County back in the day. And Chris had been working with something called Christ Together, which is a kind of national network that sort of helps plant the gospel in cities. And so Chris and I were talking at an Exponential conference one year about what would it look like to do something in Portland that's collaborative. And I was like, I'm desperate. I don't know how. And he goes, I could probably come up and maybe we could gather some people and we could just kind of pray and envision about it. Yeah. And so he came up in 2016, and we were trying to find a name for this little gathering we were going to do. And so we just kind of like finally landed on, like, let's just call it Multiply PDX. Just like we can get like 20 people together.
I'm surprised you didn't call it like Saturate, because they're all about gospel saturation.
I know, right? They are. Yeah. He probably suggested it. I don't know. But so we just had we thought it was gonna be like 15, 20 people. I think we crammed like 35 people into this tiny room. And it was really neat to see there was interest in what would it look like, to really circle up around the city and pray that the Lord would, bring more, not only bring, but produce more workers, more churches, and more opportunity for the gospel. So, I mean, long story short, there is a big failure piece that I'd love to share at some point as well, because I think every time, and it was earlier than that, but I think every time something gets moving, there's always the backstory,
Yeah.
Wow. Well, hey, failure stories are often the best. So I think a lot of people listening, 10 churches that you've planted, they would say, hey, that's success. Like, that's a lot of fruit. But not every project or planter that we try to endeavor in is quote unquote successful, right? Quote unquote ends like in what we would say is, this is a successful church plant.
Yeah.
So share. What are some of the risks that you had to take, or what are some of the disappointments in that work?
Well, the first disappointment was the earlier attempt to kind of gather people around, probably a little too polished of an idea that was sort of imported. And in my enthusiasm, I was just kind of like, everybody's going to love this, because here's what we need. We don't even have to think it up.
It's you came down from the mountain, right?
No, someone else must have, and they handed me the tablets, and I was like, boom, let's do that.
Someone from Texas, right?
No, but
close,
probably, yeah, somewhere in the South, I think. But the idea was just it was not rocket science. It was nothing new. It's just that I think the way that it happened, it was not something that was birthed from prayer locally in a circle. It was not something that was a shared perceived need. And so there was a number of things that weren't in place. And in my naivety, I thought, this is just the best thing since sliced bread. So let me basically bet the farm in terms of my own personal credibility on pulling people together. And it just didn't go well. And, it's not like anybody was mad at me or anything like that, but it just like, I think it majorly flopped. It was a belly flop, and I think then for a number of years, honestly, after that, I was probably a little gun shy, but I think also people were like, yeah, we kind of heard, the thing. And you know what I'm saying? So I think my learning there was that these things must be birthed out of a shared passion and burden that the Holy Spirit brings. And that if it's not that, then even if it works, it'll probably go slower and not as far as if it were shared. And so that was a big miss on my part. Again, really naive and probably just a little bit overly enthusiastic. Not that enthusiasm is bad, but and then some of the churches that we have planted, I mean, there's a couple of the 10, there's a couple that are no longer in existence just because the leader made a change either theologically, and it was a pretty major shift. And so the church ended up closing, or there was a moral failure or something like that. Probably the worst case for us was something that we did in Nairobi. We had a major investment in a ministry there, and it was long, years long, lots of money, lots of people, lots of prayer, lots of time, ideas, trips, all this stuff. And it was beautiful until the wheels came off because there was huge scandal with the leader, and it was just, and everything fell apart, just like, and we had just planted a little congregation in a second congregation from kind of their mother church that they were working from. And, it was going to be so exciting. And, what really surfaced out of that was just that there wasn't not the proper leadership structure on their side, transparency and accountability. They just weren't there. And so I think one of the things that we've had to learn is we got to say no, when you're looking at, you got somebody with potential, you got an opportunity that seems so amazing, these people need Jesus, it's in some ways you can look in certain parts of the world and go, it's so economical to do ministry there. We could reach 100 people there for every one we could reach here, dollar per dollar and all that stuff. But I think we just had to start really exercising more discernment with partnerships and going slower, asking more questions. That's something that I think has been, for me, a learning. But yeah, there's been lots of bumps and bruises and scars, along the way. and that's, because then you got to go to a church and go, hey, just to be honest, we sold you on this vision of these things, and here's what's happened.
But it's real. I mean, I do think as someone that with several failures, like, church planning and my best mentor has said, like, you got to look at that as education. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it is part of the process. And like, God has a way of multiplying it and bringing it back around. If we don't shame the people, you know what I mean? Like, if there's, restoration, and if there is, like, when the time comes to, so it can all come back around.
It can. And I think especially if it's more like a season, like a lot, I think right now we're in a place where aren't there a lot of, we know in our city, there's a lot of people who are saying, wow, I think I'm going to do something else right now. And okay, so, but it's not the same as this massive colossal scandal.
Yeah.
So,
but there might be a move of God in the next few years where people, they will be so needed in their experience, and will be used by God to shepherd in something else,
Yep.
I wonder, Gabe, would you share a little bit about this new design process that we've gone through. And you shared before that there was more of kind of bringing the stone tablets down the mountain and like giving it to the churches in the city. Hey, here's the plan to multiply churches in our city. And we've kind of taken a different, more like ground level up approach. You want to talk about that a little
Absolutely.
bit?
I mean, you told me in another setting a couple of days ago, like that you feel like the Holy Spirit's done more in the last 6 months.
Oh yeah.
Than the previous
6 years.
6 years. Yeah.
Because like,
that's exciting.
2016 happened, we had this little gathering. And so we had just, a couple of years before that learned the lesson of like, let's don't try to create something. Let's try to observe and discern something and then let it bubble up from, and so that was really slow by 2019. And so we ended up just doing these occasional gatherings. I've been trying to like, as much as possible, just keep track of names of people and keep people connected.
Kind of have a map, even
a little bit,
like
a little bit of a map, and then there's not like, there's a lot of people around the city that have that similar heartbeat. So I've tried to, create some friendships. And so we kind of created this little crew even before COVID. 2019, we got to put our hands on Kyle Davies and Generations Church and do a collaborative church plant in Vancouver, which was a blast.
Yeah.
And that church is going well and very excited about Generations Church. And then COVID hit and we were, like, what are we going to do? Well, we started doing these Zoom calls once a month.
I thought that was a brilliant pivot too.
Just to
and
try
that was really encouraging.
Stay connected, right?
Not even just for Portland, but for my friends that would jump in from Seattle or whatever.
You helped us with some great, you brought some
New
people.
York and
so it, I would say this. I would say at some point along the way, we transitioned from stone tablets to stone soup. I've been using the metaphor of stone soup.
I love it. I've never heard that before.
Okay.
But you know what stone soup is, right?
I read the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So stone soup, for those of you listening or watching that don't know, stone soup is like, I'll just say it in like really quick. These guys were traveling through towns in Europe. I think they were on a military conquest or something, but they were hungry and they were trying to find some place to have food. And so they have this idea, we're going to go into this town and we're going to make soup. And the other guy was, one guy said to the other, and the other one was like, well, we don't have any soup. We don't have any stuff. He said, well, we got stones. So they go into this town, they say, hey, everybody, let's get together. We're going to make soup and we've got the stones. Does anybody have a pot? And so somebody's like, I got a pot, and anybody got carrots? Anybody got meat? And they make soup, right? Because everybody brought what they could. And so I think along the way we discovered what we really need to do is go, maybe you've got experience, maybe you've got money, maybe you've got coaching, maybe you've got a few people, maybe you've got a building. But if we were all to put our stuff in the middle of the town, we could probably start a church, And so that's what happened along the way. And then COVID hit, and then we're trying to just, stay connected. And then we get through COVID, and finally, okay, we can start doing things again. And
we meet a guy named Oshawa, and we hear a term that rocks our world.
Yeah,
empathy.
That's right.
We begin with empathy. Where was our empathy all that time?
I know.
No, but what a beautiful, and I wasn't even like, I wasn't with you guys on the coast, but like just I love that, the idea and the, listening, coming in humility, empathy.
Yeah, totally.
And that has, been a game changer for us.
100%. And it even kind of just a little bit went back further than that to September of last year, 2022. We got invited to go to Houston for the City Network's Learning Lab with Chad Clarkson and the Houston Church Planting Network. And so a few of us went, Oshawa, Ryan, Sidholm from Vancouver, myself, and others of you were invited, but you couldn't come, and that was okay.
Can I share the story real quick of how I ended up there?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of crazy.
It is.
So I saw the invite and I thought, that's so kind of them to think of me and to invite me. And I look at my calendar and I'm already booked. I'm leading another collaborative event for another organization I work with, and then there's this leadership conference that I'm supposed to be at in Orlando. And so I had to apologize. Hey, it's awesome. Stoked, but I can't make it. I have other plans. And so I'm in Orlando at that first event that I'm helping to lead, and the other event is just I'm attending it. And there's this you could say a storm brewing. I don't remember the name of this particular
hurricane.
Of this particular hurricane, but apparently they have a lot of them in Florida
in September.
And so there's this large hurricane coming our way, and our host, who's a longtime Floridian, he's like, "Yeah, you got to get out of here. Find a plane and get home because if this hits us, the flooding and all that, you're going to be stuck here for a week. You don't want to go through it." And so I'm like, okay, and I couldn't get a flight home to Portland. And then the thought just came to me. I'm like, what if I flew to Houston? And so I randomly, I'm like, okay, how do I get a hold of him? And I text all you guys, but you're already leaving like that morning to go to Houston.
Oh, I see.
And so I text a few of you and I'm like, hey, you still got a place for me? Can I go? And then another dude, Chivo, had canceled.
That's right.
And so he was supposed to share a room with you, Gabe. And so there's an extra space in the room. There's an extra seat at the conference. And I just had to fly in. And so I'm like, hey guys, I'm coming to Houston.
It was like the night before.
And I escaped the hurricane. I was about, not quite the final flights, but like 12 hours later, they stopped letting people out of Orlando.
Yeah.
So that's how God had me in Houston.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Well, and so it was you, Ryan, Sean Mitchell from Catalyst, and myself, and at this big Networks Learning Lab, which is great. And I think one of the things that really we sparked was we got to really pause and ask a lot of questions about what is it that we're trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And they were really good. I mean, and some of them, I would have probably said I had already worked through some answer, but it wasn't a we, Mm-hmm. And so I loved it. It was so much fun to be able to just put it on the table and go like, I mean, this is not on stone tablets. This is just, let's do this,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it was really fun to see those gentlemen jump in and we just kind of dissected and we dreamed a little bit. And on the tail end of that, we were like, we should get more people together for something where we could really.
So that's where the idea for a retreat at the coast came together.
And then Oshua, as we were talking during that time, with his training and some of background, he had this design lab experience.
I've been perusing the Stanford University website.
Right. And so he's like talking about this design stuff. And I'm thinking, well, it sounds like you could really help us with that. So we meet at the coast and we do this design lab, which, was over 2 or 3 days. Well, I think we had 6 of us in person. I think you were one of the 6 that were online, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And and it was so much fun because what we got to do was not just brainstorm, which would have been great, but it wouldn't have been enough because what we instead did was we practiced empathy. And so Oshua had lined up, 6 or 8, it seemed like, different leaders from around the city, different streams, different ethnicities, different experiences. And we got to hear, we didn't just say like, what do we think, the Ethiopian church, that's trying to start, what do we think they might want to know or need? So let's build something that we think they might, but we just asked and we just got to listen. Mm-hmm. And it was so informative. It was so helpful to hear directly. And the stuff that we heard, it was like, for me, like light bulbs were going off. Like I would have never thought of that. I would have never guessed that was the thing. Because along the way, I think the other big piece that's happening is in our city, there's been such a shift toward decentralized church expressions that it can't be ignored, And so for us to pretend like this is all about church planting in the classic sense of the word would be missing at least half of what the emphasis in our city seems like by God is right now, right? So I think that's where we're just seeing a lot of fruit, a lot of new stuff, a lot of brand new leaders. How exciting. Kind of makes me think back to those like missionary Bible college days. Like, you could have a Bible college in your church and you don't need more than 3 students,
Dude, this reminded me before, I got asked to preach in this Haitian church plant, like 30 miles north of New York City. And my church was meeting at the evening at that time. So I'm like, yeah, this is great. And the pastor's telling me, it's a miracle. We planted a church. He's like, we found a space and someone donated 30 chairs. So we felt like God was telling us to plant a church.
Exactly.
And I was like,
that's beautiful.
Here I am, like trying to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars. And like, all you needed was 30 chairs. I'm like, I love that. That's way better system.
Yeah, it is.
Yes. Why are we overcomplicating? Yeah. Just go do the stuff, right? That's what John Wimber said. Like, when do we get to do the stuff? That's like in the Bible. Just go do it.
That's really cool.
I don't know who would be better to answer this question, but like, let's unpack the design lab a little bit so that people can maybe, use it in their own context. Like, what is it?
Sure. So I can talk about the process, and then maybe Gabe, you can talk about our three prototypes that came out of it. So it's a human-centered design, meaning that you're starting with your end user or your customer or the person you want to serve. And so we began with, you need to ask, okay, what are the problems that the people that you're serving face? So there's empathy, there's asking questions, and that's what we spend a lot of time doing. And that's very much like a whiteboarding kind of, you're gathering tons of information, right? But then you have to narrow it down and define what are those key problems that you think you can add value for. And so it goes wide, it's divergent, and then you converge on a few to kind of defining what are those problems, what are those value propositions that you can have. And then it goes wide again into ideation, the brainstorming of, what are 50 different things that we could try to do to solve these problems that we've identified. And there's no wrong answer. You just throw them out there. But then you have to, right, kind of converge again on what are a few prototypes that we can actually test. And I think, and this is one of the distinctions of, instead of like we're launching a program and we're coming down from the mountain, here's how we're gonna meet your needs, is
I've done that before. I'm not doing that again.
It's more of a humble, open-handed approach to say, we don't know if this is gonna work. This is a test. It's a prototype. In fact, just this morning, SpaceX had a launch, and it was their Starship plus the big rocket that's going to get it to Mars. And so it's the first time doing this particular launch with the rocket, and they were like, hey, if it gets off the ground and doesn't like incinerate the launch pad, we're stoked.
I love that. I mean, it did. It exploded, but they still were like so excited. I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah. So you're like watching the broadcast of it. It gets off the launch pad. It goes up and it's in kind of the upper atmosphere, and it's doing this turn thing, and then it's supposed to disconnect, and the thing blows up.
Yeah.
And what did they call it? It's like an unscheduled spontaneous disassembly. And so it has.
I've had a few of those in church.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to say it.
But they were so happy about that.
They're celebrating it exploding. And what the response was, this was a test, and we gathered a lot of data.
Yeah.
And this assembly gave us that information.
And just think about this for a second. How much money did they lose there? I mean, but they wouldn't have said that. They would say, no, we invested it in education.
They invested in learning.
Yeah.
And they're assuming we're going to fail forward. They're assuming we're going to get a little higher each time, and the explosion's going to happen.
Yeah. They failed
take longer
fast.
to explode.
It was like 30 seconds and they failed.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. So the prototypes that we came up with were kind of based on the empathy that we gathered, or the data that we gathered from the empathy learning sessions. And one of them was a podcast. And so this is one of those prototypes. And so we're checking it out. Right. And, so far nothing has blown up. You've had some bumps and bruises, and, had to make some adjustments with some chairs and some design stuff and different things, but
give us feedback. If you're listening,
feedback. How can we make this better? But one of the reasons why that is because we've seen so many planters, particularly from outside of our area, come and, either parachute in or just ministries that wanted to start something here. And there's a kind of a steep learning curve, but also there would be anywhere. Mm-hmm. So hopefully this is a way to help all of us to get our arms around what is it like to multiply the gospel in the Northwest. So this is one of those prototypes. Yeah. A second one was regular gatherings. And so we just did a gathering this past weekend. As we're recording this, it was this past weekend, and it was so much fun. We didn't know what to call it. And so remember how many names we came up with, like a whole bunch of names, but ended up being called a citywide multiplication party, which was fantastic.
I think the Hawthorne and Armstrong children had the most fun.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Oh, they told me all about the dodgeball. And I'm like, dude, you got to play dodgeball at church? That's so cool.
Yes,
and if you didn't know this, they did dodgeball in the brand new remodeled space at the church. And I was like, oh boy.
Well, I heard about it. I'm like, well, there was childcare workers down there. I just assumed that was something they do, but probably not.
I don't know.
But I'll have to talk to Ryan about that because he's the one that brought in the childcare.
But I think one of the cool things about the event was that we were able to understand from the empathy gathering time that we had, what were the real needs of people who are, think about it, bivocational, maybe church planters, or maybe they're network leaders, or maybe they are disciple-making movement leaders. And so one of the things that we learned was the spouse support is critical because spouses are not feeling heard, understood, supported, or even validated. Mm-hmm. And so it was so fun to be able to pull that piece in and go, let's make it feel a little bit like a date night, Yeah. And so the other part of the team was working on that, did a great job. So that was a really beautiful thing. And then the third piece was really just clarifying some vision pieces and being able to connect with more actionable steps. Yeah. And so
to clarify, there was a significant rebrand necessary.
There was a rebrand necessary. Yes. Yeah. And in fact, we were on the way. So we've really adopted this sort of trial and error mentality. I love it. So along the way, we were kind of trying to figure out what's our next logo, because there were some among the ranks that thought that the logo from Multiply PDX needed to be
possibly
updated,
dusted off,
yeah, a little bit, because it was, I think it was like two X-wing fighters forming this weird X or something like that. And anyways, but so we were going to design, but as a part of that process, we've been connecting with Together PDX, which is this great gospel movement in Portland that's been going for a long time.
Yeah.
And we never intended to have a parallel name. It just came out that way. So
didn't they copy from you?
I don't think so. I don't know what happened, but it was probably about the same time that both those bubbled up. I'm not sure, but we've been sort of now partnering more with Together PDX. And so now we're getting some administrative help on that end, which is really great. Got our kind of web page on their site, and really a little more close partnership, coordination. It's nice communication with Together PDX. So that's been awesome. I mean, and I was so encouraged when they reached out and just all of a sudden we're realizing there's wind in these sails, That's been really fun.
So where do we want to go next? We gonna have another time at the beach, and
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think, okay, so that's a good question. And I think one of the things that is obvious is the Lord is raising up people around the city. And I think our new job, my like antenna are up. And it's not really what's next, it's who's next. And I think that's an interesting shift that I'm seeing in my own, maybe this phase of my life, and realizing that there's not one person that could do what needs to be done. It's people everywhere. It's people everywhere. It's got to be Stone Soup.
Yeah.
And so like yesterday I had a great Zoom call with somebody that was at the event on Friday night, who is a woman who is a leader in disciple making across our city, and is like a driver. And so she's ready to be, like, put me in coach, like, help me. I want to be connected to this. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. And I think to me, that's the most exciting part of this, is that this has gone from a slow moving thing to all of a sudden there's all these people who are sitting at this big table and representing like all this other work that's being done. It's crazy. And we're becoming aware of how we can partner and and accelerate this whole thing. So that's I think is what's next, is recognizing leaders, platforming, resourcing.
Yeah. And have, people bring in their gifts, Oshawa with this design lab, and you with your experience, and me trying to connect people, and beautiful. It's exciting.
Good stuff.
I wonder, so we did this empathy process with that event on Friday. We did some live polling. Mm-hmm. We also did a pretty robust feedback form afterwards to hear from people what was most helpful. If you were gonna kind of cast a vision for the next gathering, and someone was listening, and they're like, I'm pretty busy. I don't know if I want to just kind of go to this one extra thing to go to put on my calendar. What would you say to describe what was unique about the gathering that we had on Friday, and it might make people want to say, hey, that'd be valuable.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I was reflecting on this yesterday, because something clicked. I mean, we had, for one thing, Rick McKinley of Imago Dei came and spoke to us, and that was just a gift. Mm-hmm. What an eloquent job. What an encouraging time. Mm-hmm. And I think the tone of that event was that you have what it takes, and so there was this very encouraging, this isn't impossible. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's going to happen if we just lean into what God is doing, and you can do it, And so I think that for me, I watched so many people leave with that, kind of like just with their spirits lifted, a little bit encouraged, resourced. There was electricity in the room the entire time, because people were looking across the room going, you too, and all these connections, and realizing this commonality. And then, because there was such different sectors involved, or different kinds of expressions, everybody there found commonality. And it was awesome. I mean, whether you were a denominational leader or a church planter, or a pastor of a church that was trying to multiply, or somebody that's, doing Discovery Bible studies, there were like comrades in the room.
Yeah.
And it was cool. There was no competition, no sense of competition. I loved it.
Yeah.
So I love your very kingdom-centered answer. I was thinking more about the good Hawaiian food.
Oh, there was Hawaiian food.
The fact that it was ministry leaders and their spouses who could come together and share together. That there was free childcare. The kids got to play dodgeball.
Amazing music. 1 second it was John Mayer. The next it was worship music.
Dude, sweet time of worship, and there was merch. Right?
Totally. Everybody got.
I got
gifts.
Vinyl. I got Gabe and
you got a
Melissa's
vinyl
book.
Yeah,
dude. So we gave away books. We gave away Humble Beast merch.
My son has a T-shirt. It's like his new pajamas because it's a little big, but he's loving his Humble Beast T-shirt.
Oh, sweet. I mean, it really was, I think, in some ways, what we had hoped for, and that was that it felt like a gift. At least at some level, there were no strings attached. There were no strings attached. And everybody got blessed. That was awesome.
Yeah.
So should we do it again?
Let's do it again.
Yes. What's next? More parties.
More parties in the summer. Maybe do it outdoors.
Oh, that'd be fun. Shoot. Maybe we could host it in East Portland. We got a big backyard.
Ooh. Yeah. Well, is there any final kind of words that you would want to share, or even just kind of as you think about how God's moving in your heart and what your hopes are?
I think my encouragement for everybody would be look inside your circle and find out where you see God at work in multiplication, because it's probably there. I mean, it's probably there in your family. It's probably there in your small group if you're in one. Yeah. It's probably there in your church. And I think if we could start taking away some of the cultural excuses as to why we do not multiply the gospel, and just kind of let it happen, see what happens. I mean, I'm just attracted to this old missionary thing of going, if we had to work with almost nothing, but we had the gospel and we had 30 chairs or whatever it was, we would do it, And so what's in your hand, I guess, is the question. And what do you have to bring to the table? And if you'll bring it, we're here to support you in that. So reach out and let us know. but I'm positive that God's going to use it, and He's up to something, and He's going to use you too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Pete, what about you? What are your, I mean, none of us are getting paid to do this. We got to just invest some time. What's your vision or heart for this?
I mean, my dream really is that people get more connected, that they would see that they're not alone, and that they could see that it doesn't have to be a quote unquote traditional, like when people think of church planting, like 80s and 90s church planting, like it can literally be you gathering 15, 20 friends in your backyard this summer and like doing a book club, doing a little Bible study, like just building community. People are hungry for it. So just seeing little things like that pop up, and that we would know one another, you know, and be encouraged that way. That would be an amazing thing to play any kind of role in.
Well, thanks guys for taking the time to walk us through and pull this out of me, and it's been fun discussing with you, and thank you for just this journey that we get to be on together. We hope that you lean in, and we hope that there's a way we can resource one another, and we know that God is up to some good things. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Jesus in the Upper Left. We want to ask you a quick favor. Would you please subscribe so you don't miss a single episode, and share with those that are in your life that might benefit from the content. Hit the notifications button, rate and review, of course, and then head on over to upperleftshow.com, where you can find bonus content, opportunities to connect with those around the city that are doing similar work as you, resources to help you, and just a way to connect to the community. We hope to see you again next time.
And leave us a review. Give us feedback.